November 4th, 1979. In front of a U.S. embassy in the center of the Helland, there was a chaos. Thousands of protesters broke through the line of defense and broke into the control area. 58 U.S. diplomats were immediately surrounded. The security personnel were overwhelmed and had no choice but to surrender. In less than a few hours, 52 U.S. diplomats and staff fell into the hands of Iranian protesters. The revolutionaries had only one condition, which was to hand over the exiled Iranian king. Otherwise, the Americans would see the bodies of their compatriots piled up on the streets. In the chaos, 6 U.S. diplomats managed to escape through the secret door of the embassy. In the next few days, they fled everywhere to track them down. Later, they changed their identities and kept fleeing. The risk of being caught every day was increasing. It was even more difficult for them to live and represent Iran. And this task was eventually handed over to the U.S. CIA. They built a stage and set up a fake Hollywood movie set. There were fake actors, fake scripts, and even fake movie posters. This was not a real movie, but a rescue operation code name for the CIA Al-Qaeda. In November 1979, the political turmoil in Iran reached its peak. A few months earlier, in January 1979, the former Iranian ruler, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, fled the country under the pressure of the people's protests. He was supported by the U.S. in his 38-year rule, but the people of Iran could not bear it. The king lived a luxurious life, but the people were suffering. Iran's power was in fact in the hands of the U.S., and the decision was left to the U.S. Oil resources were also completely controlled by the U.S., and the people of Iran were getting poorer and poorer. In the hearts of the people, the dignity of the king of Iran had long become a puppet of the U.S. The king's secret police officer, Sawak, was even more intimidating, specifically suppressing opponents. This is the scene when the U.S. embassy was besieged by Iran before Iran and the United States severed diplomatic relations. At this time, the angry Iranians not only publicly burned the U.S. flag, but even tried to rush into the embassy. When they saw that the Iranians had rushed into the yard, the flustered American ambassador immediately ordered, "Burn everything, burn it. Now, all right, burn everything, all the files, file cabinets." The ambassador ordered to destroy the confidential documents as soon as possible, but it was too late to destroy them. The angry Iranians have been rushing into the embassy from afar. The soldiers in the embassy began to distribute weapons. They had made the worst preparation, but the ambassador gave the order. "I need you to hold. If you shoot one person, they're going to kill every single one of us in here." The ambassador ordered the guards not to shoot. It takes an hour to destroy the documents, but the angry Iranians won't give them this time. At this time, they began to smash the glass, ready to break into the house by force. The American guards were releasing smoke bombs to disperse the crowd, but this behavior only angered the Iranians even more. They started a more fierce attack. The staff was nervously breaking the confidential documents. Once some documents fall into the hands of the Iranians, the staff may be killed as spies. Unexpectedly, the door of the room was suddenly broken. A large number of Iranians rushed in. Directly, there was even a little time left. The Americans quickly destroyed the equipment. All the visa information must be destroyed. Otherwise, the information of those young Iranians will be leaked. Those waiting for them will be executed on the street. Soon, Iran occupied the entire embassy and captured all the staff. More than 50 of them were taken away blindfolded. But 6 people took the opportunity to run out the back door and hid in the office of the Canadian ambassador nearby. At this time, the White House, which received the news, was in a mess because Iran wanted to use these dozens of people as an exchange and asked the former king to flee India from the United States. But the U.S. did not want to take the name of the traitor. The two sides have not been able to reach a consensus. The U.S. did not even have a way to save those 6 people. Until 69 days later, there was finally a big problem. The U.S. reported that Iran was repairing the documents that had been destroyed. Once the name cards and photos of the staff at the embassy were repaired, they would eventually find the 6 people who had fled. Iran had previously stated that those who were not in the office would not be protected by diplomacy and would be treated as spies. Canada was also urging the U.S. to quickly take these 6 people away. So the White House could only hand over the rescue mission to the CIA. because now the U.S. national flag cannot enter Iran at all. The CIA plans to let 6 people escape by bike, ride to the Turkish border, and escape Iran from there. But this distance is 600 kilometers. Special Agent Cohen thinks this is not realistic at all. Ordinary people who have not been trained are impossible to cross Iran and escape smoothly. Cohen is a rescue expert at the CIA. After the Iranian coup, many senior U.S. officials were rescued by him. He suggested that a few people fake their identities and leave the airport in the open. But the boss soon denied his suggestion, because now Iran has no Americans. Once they are checked at the airport, they will be exposed. Due to the influence of North American accents, they can at most obtain fake Canadian passports. But the Canadian identity is not enough to let them leave the country smoothly, because Iran is very strict with entry and exit checks. They must have a reasonable identity to avoid being exposed. Due to the influence of North American accents, they can at most obtain fake Canadian passports. But the Canadian identity is not enough to let them leave the country smoothly, because Iran is very strict with entry and exit checks. They must have a reasonable identity to avoid being exposed. At this time, Iran has hired a large number of children to restore the data that the embassy had crushed before. Soon they found that the number of people in the U.S. embassy was not right. But now the rescue mission is at a critical juncture. Cohen, who was watching TV, suddenly had an inspiration. He plans to enter Iran in the name of filming a movie with a Canadian crew, give the 6 people the identity of the crew, and then leave Iran by plane together. Although it sounds unreliable, after the Islamic Revolution broke out in Iran, in addition to the film crew, few Europeans and Americans entered Iran. The superiors approved this plan very quickly. In order to make everything flawless, Cohen found Hollywood professionals. They want to use a real script to complete all this. In order to make everything look very real, Hollywood famous, producer Lester also decided to help them. Just when Cohen was trying to save the movie, the boss asked him to come back immediately, because President Carter, who cares about details, wanted to see him. Do you think this is more plausible than teachers? Yes, we do. 1. There are no more foreign teachers in Iran. There are only bad options. It's about finding the best one. Hearing what they said, the president could only agree to this plan. Although the identity of the movie crew looks very high profile, no one would have thought it will be fake because of this. The people responsible for searching for them in Iran have been constantly searching nearby and even directly shot those who did not cooperate with the investigation. This made the few people hiding in the embassy more and more afraid. Cohen, who has been disguised as a Canadian, soon arrived in Turkey. He was going to enter Iran from here. He came to Iran to live in the Turkish embassy and apply for a visa. Why didn't she get her visa in Canada? I would have loved to, except my boss didn't send the telex till I got here. The Iranian staff didn't think much and agreed to the visa. Just after the flight landed at Tehran airport, Cohen encountered trouble again. Although the process of entering was smooth, the information card filled in when entering was taken away. When she was deported in the future, the editor had to compare the information to see if it was consistent. Cohen could only take away a piece of the information card so that the other 6 people could use it when they were deported. After successfully entering Tehran, she came to the Iranian Ministry of Culture in the first stop. This film crew is just for you. No, we have 6 more from Canada meeting us today. In order to successfully collect the movie on the name, she also obtained the authorization from the Iranian Ministry of Culture. Soon, Cohen met the Canadian ambassador, got the Canadian passport prepared for 6 people, and then the 2 returned to the embassy by car. From the eyes of the embassy staff, she could see their desire to go home. Cohen told a few people about the whole plan. They only have a short time to prepare. The crew will leave the scene tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, they will take the risk to fly to Turkey at the airport. In such a short time, they not only have to master for them, but they had no choice, because Canada would soon close the Iranian embassy. They had no choice but to do everything they could. In order to make everything more real, they needed to go to the largest market in Iran to collect the movie. But this would expose their disguise. It was also a hopeless situation. At that moment, Iran was still collecting documents destroyed by the United States. Their work was very effective. Many photos had been successfully restored. The unknown few had already boarded the car. Outside, however, as soon as they left, they encountered a crowd of people. Soon, some of the people found the foreigners in the car. They kept hitting the car and shouting slogans. Once their identities were exposed, they would be dragged out and beaten to death on the street. Fortunately, a few people managed to get through. After arriving at the market under the guidance of a local tour guide, they entered the bustling market. However, the Iranians who followed them secretly had also taken their photos. The appearance of these foreigners caused their extra attention. Everyone gave them a look of interrogation. A few people dared not communicate with others. They just wanted to finish the process as soon as possible. Even so, the process of collecting the film was still troublesome. An Iranian stopped them from leaving. He did not give you permission to leave the store. That's okay. You can tell him it didn't happen. Yeah, that's what you want. At this time, the boss of once they were found at the airport, they would definitely be executed. This would become a scene ticket that the superiors rushed to recover and canceled. However, the leader told him that this required the president's authorization. These 10 people were already on their way to the airport. Kern sent everyone the forged entry. The leaders of the CIA were urgently contacting the president. They needed to rush to the airport to confirm the plane tickets. Soon, a few people arrived at the international airport in Tehran. Step was the most strict immigration check. The inspectors checked everyone's passports carefully. There was indeed a problem when checking the entry information card, but the inspectors didn't find the save page. When did you come to Iran? 2 days ago. What was the purpose of the Ministry of Culture? Fortunately, there were cases of lost files. The inspectors didn't care much. Although a few people passed the check, they had to go through the inspection of the Revolutionary Guards before boarding the plane. The inspection of the soldiers was not as easy as that of Angia. They paid special attention to these foreigners. After looking at their IDs, the soldiers thought it was insufficient to prove their identity. So they took a few people to the quarantine room for inspection. In order to prove that they were really confirmed that these were the 6 people who fled from the embassy. They rushed to the embassy in Canada to arrest them. But when they rushed in, they found that there were already empty seats here. So they immediately called the airport to ask to intercept a few people. At this time, the soldiers at the airport just released a few people. They had already boarded the plane and were waiting to take off. Just when the plane received the takeoff signal and began to glide, the Revolutionary Guards at the airport also answered the phone. A large number of soldiers rushed to the airport to try to intercept the plane that had already begun to glide. However, they were still one step late. The plane had already taken off, but the people still dare not let go until, after returning to China, Khan was awarded the highest honor of a CIA agent. The film also came to an end. These hostages were a shock to the world at the time. It was only announced to the public nearly 20 years after being secretly sealed. This film is based on a change in history and has a political tendency. But the tension and rhythm of the film is not a waste of time. At the same time, it also won the Oscar for Best Film of the Year.